Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And I'll tell you in today's episode why this matchup with the Braves, it may not be as big of a series as it seems for the Phillies. I actually think that this could be a win-win for the Philadelphia Phillies down in Atlanta. I'll explain that and much more on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. We come to you live from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for checking us out. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. By the way, I'm your host, Connor Thomas, and you may know me from my work on the radio, morning talk show host on 97.5 The Fanatic in Philadelphia, 3 years of credentialed time as a Philadelphia Phillies media member, and I'm in my 3rd season as the host of Locked On Phillies. Thanks for checking us out once again. This episode of Locked On Phillies is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.comThe, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Well, the Phillies are in their rival city right now, Atlanta, Georgia, as they prepare to take on the Atlanta Braves for only the 2nd time this season. It's kind of wild that the opening series of the year was against the Atlanta Braves, and now in early July is the 2nd time you match up with them. A lot of stuff has changed for these two teams after that, or well, I guess between the time of that first series and where we're at today. So let's just set the scene a little bit for this series. The first series of the year, the Braves took 2 of 3 games in Philadelphia. And since that moment, pretty much, the Phils lost the next series to the Cincinnati Reds. But since that moment, you absolutely watched the Phillies dominate baseball. They became the best team in baseball. They have the best record in baseball. They have been on a tear. For the Braves, it hasn't quite been the same. The offense hasn't been as productive as they imagined it would be, especially coming off of an insane 2023 regular season. And you guys probably already know this, but Spencer Strider, done for the year. Ronald Acuna Jr., done for the year. They lost their best pitcher and their best position player, the reigning NL MVP, and the favorite to win the National League Cy Young Trophy coming into this year. They're both gone. This is why the injury situation is different for the Phillies. While they don't have Harper and they don't have Schwarber and they don't have Real Muto, those guys are all coming back, and they're coming back relatively soon. So if the Atlanta Braves take care of business against the Phillies this weekend and they do what they want to do, win 2 of 3 down there and win the series, well, you can argue that the Philadelphia Phillies will say, well, we have these guys coming back. You guys aren't getting better unless you acquire people at the trade deadline. The Phillies have a clear path to getting better, and they don't have to do anything. They just have to survive the time without JT, Bryce, and Schwarber. And since Bryce and Schwarber went down, you are a 5-2 baseball team, which is a pretty darn good spot. 5-2 or 4-2? 1, 2 there, 2. 4-2 baseball team, which is a darn good spot to be if you were the Philadelphia Phillies. That's impressive that they've done that without 2 of their biggest hitters when they're fully healthy. 2 of their definitely most important players with JT Realmuto out. But yeah, here's why I think that this series down in Atlanta is a win-win in multiple ways for the Philadelphia Phillies, whether they win the series or not. Part of the reason is that injury conversation. We'll get into that later. But obviously it's a win for the Philadelphia Phillies if they go down to Atlanta, they take 2 of 3 from the Braves. Do you know what the narrative is? The narrative is, dude, we don't even have our best team. We're getting better. We're already ahead of you in the standings. We go into your place with a 9-game divisional lead coming into the series, and there's a chance that you could put your foot on the throats of the Atlanta Braves early in the season. This is still relatively early for playoff contention, or I guess rather playoff seeding, and you could really put a stranglehold on the NL East if you go down there and you take 2 of 3 from the Braves. That's clear. Anytime you win a series against your closest divisional opponent, that is a big win. Whether the lead is 9 games, 1 game, 900 games. I don't think you can have that mathematically, but you understand what I'm saying. Those are always big series. But here's why maybe the series isn't as big as it might seem, at least from the Phillies' perspective. It's because 9 games is a big lead. You could go down to Atlanta and get swept. And I'm not advocating for the Phillies to do that. I would much rather them win 2-3 or sweep the Braves. Obviously, I root for the Phillies. I host Locked On Phillies. I'm a Phillies fan. I want them to win. But if the Phillies go down there and they lose 2-3, they will still be 7 games up in the division. If they get swept, they will still be 6 games up in the division. And this is where the injuries come in. You'll say, well, yeah, you swept us now, but we're going to get better. We're going to have 3 of our top 4 players come back after this series. And, well, not after this series, but like in the near future. Next time you see Atlanta, it'll look like a very different Philadelphia Phillies baseball team. I can't say the same about the Braves. The Braves can't say that same about themselves. And that's where you have this kind of built-in excuse, for lack of a better term, where the Phillies aren't playing at full strength right now. And while the Braves aren't either, those guys aren't coming back. But there's more to it than this, right? There's more to it than just, oh, okay, it's a win-win that way. I understand there's an argument to say if the Atlanta Braves take 2-3 against the Philadelphia Phillies, win this series, whether it's a sweep or win it, they might be able to talk themselves into, oh, we play this team well. We have confidence against the Philadelphia Phillies. We believe we can beat them. Guess what? They had that the past 2 years, and in the postseason, it doesn't matter. I don't think that if the Braves won the season series against the Philadelphia Phillies in the regular season, and these two teams matched up in the postseason, Atlanta would then feel confident saying, well, we can beat this Phillies team. No, they're still going to have the nerves of postseason losses of the past 2 years. So I don't think you're learning anything in the regular season about these two teams matching up that we don't kind of already know. All that can happen from this series is either the Braves can keep themselves relatively alive in the NL East race, or the Philadelphia Phillies can make this lead much more daunting for the folks down in Atlanta. And the other thing you have to think about, too, is the roles are reversed. Put yourself in the shoes of the Phillies for the past couple years. When they went down to Atlanta, or when Atlanta came to Citizens Bank Park and you played the Braves, the pressure was always on the Phillies. Always. The Braves had the big lead in the division. The Braves felt comfortable with their standing, and the Phils had the press to say, hey, we need 2-3. We've got to sweep this series. We have to find a way to beat this Braves team and close the gap and find a way to make this a divisional race once again, or at least put the Phillies in a divisional race. I know there are other teams in the NL East that competed with the Braves, most recently the Mets in 2022, but that was the pressure that the Phillies felt. And when you have the pressure on you, there's a better chance you make mistakes. There's a better chance you don't put together good at-bats. When the moment feels bigger than what it actually is, that leads to mistakes. For the Phillies, they're now on the other side of that equation. They're Atlanta, where you just kind of have to show up and say, okay, take care of business. There's no pressure on us. If we lose this series, so be it. We're way better than them. We're way ahead of them in the standings. We do not have to press. These games are not as important to the Philadelphia Phillies as they are to the Atlanta Braves. They're just not. And that's a good place to be in, because the Phils have gotten off to such a hot start. That's why it might be up to a win right now for the Philadelphia Phillies. And when you look at that and you say, okay, less pressure, a team that's going to get healthier, going to get better, already up in the standings, have control of it. Like, this could be a huge series for the Atlanta Braves, making or breaking where their season goes from here. That's why it's probably not as big of a series for the Phillies as you think, though. Would it be nice to put the Braves on their hindquarters at this point in the season? Absolutely. Are you going to play this team a bunch more times the rest of the regular season? Also true. And the other thing you have to think about, too, you got to look at this a different way than Braves and Phillies series of the past. It's no more that you have the pressure on you or anything like that. No, you don't have to look at it that way. The way that you approach this series is from a position of power, which is a much better place to be in. And it's also one where you say, okay, if we can take advantage of this situation, if you can beat this team, it is absolutely a momentum builder for the Philadelphia Phillies. This would kind of be the final nail in the coffin for, okay, no, I don't want to overstate it. It's not a final nail in the coffin for the Philadelphia Phillies because, or I mean for the Phillies against the Braves, because it's a long season. But I guess the reason it's not that big of a series, right? Here's the mentality. If this was the Nationals, 9 games back on the Philadelphia Phillies in the division, Would it feel like a big series? If this was the Marlins, 9 games back on the Phillies in the NL East, it wouldn't feel like I think part of the reason this feels like such a big series, and the Braves are a solid team. We're going to talk coming up about expectations for the series in Atlanta, who to keep an eye on, why the Braves are starting to they figured a little bit of something out offensively. They might have a couple guys that are on the verge of breaking out of what feels like season-long slumps they've been in. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But I think the name value of playing your rival always juices up a series. But if you just look at the quality of the teams, Atlanta's still a very good baseball team, but quality of the teams, where they're at in the standings, where we're at in the season, it's really not that big of a series for the Phils. You have the luxury of it not being that because of the way that you've played through the first couple months. So I want to see the Phils win. And this is another disclaimer here at the end. I'm not trying to say don't be excited. I'm not trying to say I don't want the Phillies to win. I'm not trying to say don't be in front of your TV at 7:20 tonight for first pitch. Like, this is going to be a really fun, interesting series. My point is they have played other fun, interesting series. Their series against the Brewers, fun, interesting. The Phils ended up sweeping them. But that was another good team in the National League that they're going to be playoff contenders and stuff like that. Could win the NL Central. You learn stuff from that series. It's not necessarily a big series, but it's one where you can have takeaways from. And that's more how I view this series with the Atlanta Braves, is that you can learn something, but you're not going to lose all that much if you don't have the best series against the Atlanta Braves. It's a good spot to be in. So enjoy it. And coming up next, we'll talk about the expectations for what a positive series, an acceptable series, and a negative series would be down in Atlanta, Georgia. That coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. First, let's talk about Booking.com. This is apt because the Phils are in their rival city of Atlanta, Georgia. And with summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yeah, your rival cities. That's what we're talking about. They've got hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. Booking.yeah. I've always wanted to say that, and now I get to. But you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival's city. For example, let's just say a Philadelphia fan wants to take this 4th of July holiday weekend, head down to Atlanta, visit that city, and catch a game down there at Truist Park and watch the Phillies wax the Braves. It's perfect. And also, I will say this, credit to Atlanta, fun city to visit. So you can find this everywhere, though. It's not just Atlanta, Georgia. It's not just Philadelphia fans. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. So book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app, and you can see more in the description of this episode for further details. Also want to talk to you about eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships. And it's also the formula that keeps your vehicle alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got superchargers, they've got roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed or power or style or any of those things, eBay Motors has you covered. They've got over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part's guaranteed to fit your ride or your money back every single time. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. You got all the parts you need, the prices you want. It's so easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's talk a little bit about this expectation conversation for the series with the Atlanta Braves. Now, I know I just told you this series is much bigger for the Braves than it is for the Phillies. And again, a great place to be if you're the fighting Phils. When you look at it and you look at let's run through the pitching matchups real quick so you have an idea of how these teams are stacking up. But the Braves are still a good team, right? That's what you have to consider in all of this. As much as we hate them, as much as you want to see the Philadelphia Phillies win this series, and as much as you think, wow, they've been way better than the Braves this year, the Braves are 47-38. They're 9 games above 500. They have a solid record. They have a solid team. Pitching has been okay. The offense, while it has been less than what you'd expect from them, it hasn't been like flat out miserable for the Atlanta Braves. So you're going to be in a situation where there's probably going to be a loss in here somewhere. I don't see the Phillies sweeping the Braves. If they do, whoo, let's go. We'll be partying on Monday for the next episode of Locked On Phillies. But if they don't, that's to be expected. Game 1 tonight, 7:20 p.m. Aaron Nola is going to be on the mound facing Max Fried. Max Fried has had an outstanding year. He's 7-3 with a 2.91 ERA and a 1.09 WHIP. He's been so big for the Braves in the wake of Spencer Strider. We know Nola's been very good at points for the Philadelphia Phillies as well. So you're seeing a good pitcher in Game 1. That's the set expectation for tonight's contest, and we'll talk a little bit about that during the expectations. Ranger Suarez is going to face off against Spencer Schwellenbach in Game 2, and then in Game 3 of the series, you're going to be in a situation where Michael Mercado takes the mound in Atlanta for his second career MLB start, following up those 5 innings he threw in Chicago. He'll face Reynaldo Lopez, who has a 1.83 ERA, a 1.15 WHIP. He's been incredible for them too. Lopez and Fried have been the bright spots of the Atlanta Braves rotation. You get both of them. One of them faces a guy who's appeared in a Major League Baseball game twice in Michael Mercado. So it's going to be a tough pitching matchup. And with your offense not at full strength, well, I can totally understand the Philadelphia Phillies not having their best series down there in Atlanta. These are all things you have to account for. On top of that, like guys like Austin Riley and Matt Olson, who have been quieter this year, they're starting to show signs of warming up, which is not a good sign for the Phillies. I would love if they held off another series or two before they actually started to get back to their normal selves. But maybe the pressures of a big series will burst pipes and bring them back down to earth. Not earth, because earth for them is better than where they're playing right now. Bring them back down to the lower level they've been playing at this year, those big names for the Braves. Or pressure makes diamonds, and they could rise to the occasion. It'll be interesting to see how the Braves offense looks in this series, and if the Phil's pitching staff can take advantage of a team that does not look like the 2023 version of themselves. But as far as expectations are concerned, there is no way that I'm coming out of this series super, super upset with the Philadelphia Phillies. There's just not. Like, I don't see a world. Even if they were to get swept, would that be a disappointment in the series? Would that be considered a failure? Yes. But would it be like a major reevaluate what this team is? Oh, you're in trouble now type of failure? I'm not going to look at it that way. Positives for the Phillies, positive outcome would be, well, obviously a sweep, or if you win the series, that is a success. That's a positive outcome for the Phils. If they go down in Atlanta and take 2 or 3 or more, that would feel awesome as a Phillies fan, and especially considering where this team is at health-wise. But to me, and you can feel free to disagree with this. If you do, let me know in the comments of this episode on YouTube. You can comment down once you're done watching the episode. If they win one game, if the Phillies win one game out of the 3-game series they have down there in Atlanta, I think that is an acceptable outcome, all things considered. A team that needs this much more than you, a team that, I don't know if I want to say it's healthier than you, but they may be if you look at the totality of everything, with the Phils missing the 3 big guys that they are missing. The Braves have had some injury issues this year. If anything, you're even, but it's just like I look at Atlanta on the road as a tough spot to play all the time, much less without Harper, Schwarber, and Realmuto, the big 3. So I would be, if the Phillies win one of the 3 games, I say, okay, cool. Not your best series, not your worst series. Atlanta's a tough team. We move on to the series with the Dodgers, which is going to have, just a hint as we look ahead to next week, a very similar type of connotation when it comes to the expectations for the series, but a different level of urgency. That's a bridge we'll cross when we get to it, though. Let's get back to the matchup with the Braves. I won't get overly upset with this team for any result. The only thing that I would consider an abject failure would be a sweep at the hands of the Braves. You lose all 3 games down there in Atlanta, it'll be the first time the Philadelphia Phillies have been swept all year. I refuse to let that happen at the hands of the Atlanta Braves. I do not want that to be a reality, but I won't kill the team over it. I won't kill my expectations. I won't reevaluate the NL East. Business is going. This is why I called it in the first segment a win-win for Philly, because business as usual for the Phillies continues regardless of the outcome of this series. For the Braves, If they come up short, they're really going to be reevaluating their chances to compete in this division for the title, and they're going to be looking at a wild card spot for the postseason. Seems to be the likely outcome if the Philadelphia Phillies take care of business in this series. Seems to be the likely outcome anyway, but we'll see how it all plays out. It's going to be a very interesting series and arguably the biggest of the year so far. It definitely is for Atlanta. For the Phillies, you might say, you ever seen that John Hamm meme from Mad Men where the guy, I forget what the guy says to him, but he like says something mean to him, and John Hamm just goes, "I don't think about you at all." Like, that's kind of where we're at now. The Braves will have like a big victory if they win the series. The Phils are just kind of like, I don't really have to concern myself with you because we have this big of a lead, and we'll worry about that if you get any closer, which you haven't been able to do. So that's what I'm feeling for the Phillies. If they're going to win a game, it'll be the second game of the series where Ranger Suarez takes on Spencer Schwellenbach. And the other two matchups, pitching-wise, are going to be tough. It'd be nice to get a gem Aaron Nola performance today. He has done it at Truist Park before, both in the regular season and the postseason. Maybe he's good for one again. So it'll be, again, I can't say this enough. These are the series, though, that you make sure are appointment viewing, regardless of where the teams are in the standing, because the Braves and the Phillies are just quality baseball teams who have a lot of beef and a lot of history, and you know this rivalry is rolling right now. Coming up as we wrap up today's episode, we're going to give an update on what's going on with the All-Stars. I mean, we found out on Wednesday, but because yesterday was 4th of July, I haven't talked about it yet. We'll get into it, the latest update on who are going to be your All-Stars for the Phillies, and if they could break a franchise record, they should, and a Major League Baseball record. We'll discuss as we continue today's episode. You got to check this out, okay? If you're a fan of Locked On Phillies, right here on Locked On Phillies, you know we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. The job's year-round. And you know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season's over doesn't mean the IRS is going to stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat on your behalf. They've got over 14 years of experience. They also have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and Tax Network USA. If you're more of a dollars and cents kind of guy, well, they've saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or some of us can dream, finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing. Well, whatever the case may be, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. And be sure to mention Locked On Phillies at checkout, and you'll receive a $250 discount off their services. Go ahead and check out the work that they do over at Tax Network USA. I also want to talk to you about our friends over at Ibata, because we know how expensive it gets in the summer when you're dealing with going down the shore, taking vacations, all of that stuff. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. You got to buy a bunch. What do those things have in common? You're probably buying a ton of them this summer, and you don't need to stress about the cost. Use Ibata and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all of your summer essentials. Ibata is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. You can earn on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibata user earns $256 per year. That can cover a lot. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibata, you're getting cold hard cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, gift cards, anything like that. It's super easy through the app. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores: Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Super easy. You just upload your receipt and voila, the money is yours. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibata to earn cash back every time they shop. And right now, Ibata is offering our listeners $5 just for trying. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibata app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. All right, let's wrap up with an All-Star update. Now, I've been hosting a lot of radio shows this week, so I'm just trying to remember what I've said on the podcast and what I've said on air. And I don't think I've gotten a chance to react to the Philadelphia Phillies having 3 of the 4 starting infielders for the National League All-Star team. Trea Turner starting at shortstop, Alec Bohm at third, Bryce Harper at first. I don't know if Harper will play in the All-Star game. We'll see, and we'll have a discussion whether or not that's smart for him to do that, depending on where he's at injury-wise when we get closer. But the last time the Phillies did that was like 1980 something, 1970 something. It's been a while since the Phillies had 3 of 4 starters in the National League infield in the All-Star game. It's madly impressive that the Philadelphia Phillies have done that. And also, they may be on the path to breaking a franchise record for most All-Stars ever for a team. This is for the Phillies, we'll start with. The record is 5. Now, they've had 5 multiple times throughout the franchise's history, but you already have 3, and that's just the starters. You have to imagine that Zach Wheeler and Ranger Suarez will both be locks to make the All-Star team. Also, in 2011, you had 3 starting pitchers. Cole Hamels, Cliff Lee, and Roy Halladay were all members of the National League team as starters. So there is precedent for the Phillies to have 3 starters on the All-Star team. Christopher Sanchez was just the pitcher of the month for June. He probably deserves to be an All-Star, as do Zach Wheeler and Ranger Suarez. So that would be 5 right there, 6 right there. And that's not even counting reserves for the position players, where you'd imagine you're going to have guys like JT Realmuto maybe get the nod, even though he's got the injury that he's dealing with right now. Maybe someone in the outfield will get the nod. You're going to get bullpen guys in the mix, Matt Strahm, Jeff Hoffman. There are a lot of guys that could get it. I think the new record for Philadelphia Phillies All-Star representatives is going to be set by this year's team. Here's where it gets interesting. The all-time MLB record is 9. It was like the 1957 Yankees. One of the great times. It was either 57 or 59. Like a great, great, great team. And the Philadelphia Phillies, could they get to 9 All-Stars? 8 is something that happens only with incredible teams. Last year, the 2023 Braves had 8. The 2001 Seattle Mariners had 8. These are teams that dominate the regular season. Could the Phils get to 9? Well, we know they've got 3 already in Turner, Harper, and Turner, Harper, and Bohm over there at third base. Could JT be an All-Star? Possibly. That would get you to 4. Could Kyle Schwarber be an All-Star at DH? Possibly as a reserve. That could get you to 5. We'll see how that all works out. In the outfield, could Marsh or Castellanos or Rojas get a nod? Probably not, but they were close in the voting, and Marsh and Castellanos were finalists at the position. Unfortunately, they were not voted to be starters, but probably rightfully so, considering neither of those guys feel like they've had an all-star season. It would be great if my Brandon Marsh is going to be an all-star prediction came true by accident on like a backhanded sneak-in job. But let's just say those guys don't make it. We're up to 4 just through the position players. You could get 3 from the starting pitching alone, and those guys we already mentioned, Wheeler, Suarez, Sanchez. Nola's been pretty good too, but hasn't been all-star level. You could get 3. And then I think it's safe to assume Matt Strahm's going to be an all-star. Jeff Hoffman probably should too. So let's count that up. 2 from the bullpen, 3 from the rotation, makes 5. 4 as far as position players are concerned, whether it's Schwarber, whether it's Realmuto, whether it's an outfielder. That makes 9 right there. And let's just say, because people like him, Schwarber gets in, Realmuto gets in. That could be 10. The Philadelphia Phillies could set the all-time record for most All-Stars on a single team in a single year in MLB history. I don't think it's likely. I do think it's basically a lock they break the franchise record, but that just shows you how good this team is. We don't have these conversations about teams that are just okay. This team is so far above and beyond what any of us expected they would be this year, and we all expected they'd be pretty good. It's a great time to be a Philadelphia Phillies fan. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your 4th of July holiday weekend, all of these plans. I'm heading down the shore here in a little bit. As you can tell, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm a little red. I was down the shore yesterday too. So I'm going to try and stay out of the sun and watch the Phils beat down on the Braves. We hope. Fingers crossed. But I will talk to you on our next episode on Monday, and we'll review what happened in the Braves series. Also, that's going to be a huge episode. We're going to preview a series with the Dodgers. So a lot still to get into as far as this big stretch goes. We'll do that again on Monday. Thank you for checking us out. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff I always ask you to do that really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. And I'll talk to you next time on our next episode.